Welcome to the Web of Conspiracy. Here is your host, Adam Webb.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Web of Conspiracy. I am your host, Adam Webb. It is great to be back with you, and not only am I back with you, but I am nearly 100% after, I released an episode about a week and a half ago, and I was still fighting off whatever that bug was, but feeling much, much better now, and hopefully raring to go, and going to do something a little special this week, in part because of the fact that I've been behind and I haven't been keeping up with releasing podcasts every week. So I'm releasing one here Monday the 24th, but I'm also going to release one this coming Friday as well. So you're going to get 2 episodes of the Web of Conspiracy this week. That's right, 2 episodes, of course, for free as always. Of course, aside from any cost it costs for you to use your internet, then of course, technically not, but I don't make any of that money. Anyways, moving on here. Got a pretty cool show lined up here. This is something I've talked about a long time ago in the previous incarnation of the show, and I wanted to kind of touch back into it. Going to delve into spirit communication and spirit communication devices. I think there's some questions there, and I think that there's something to be addressed in looking at. So I really wanted to take a little bit of time to discuss those this topic here today. I've got a number of shows that I'm lining up and planning, so I've got a lot of topics I'm going to be talking about. Some of the upcoming shows, I'm going to look into a little closer into the Men in Black phenomena. I know that I've briefly touched on Men in Black in a number of episodes in one way or another. I know I did on the Mothman. So they've come up, of course, time and time again. I have yet to dedicate much in terms of a whole show. Not only that, but I also have an interesting case study regarding Men in Black that I want to get into as well that was suggested by a listener. So really cool stuff coming up. Also got a show a pretty famous UFO sighting, at least from where I'm from. So I'm going to delve into that. So yeah, I'm kind of getting into a little more of the UFO topics again. I'm really trying to slide my attention around a little bit. And don't worry, you conspiracy nuts, I'll be coming back around to some conspiracies. So just hang tight there. I love conspiracies just as much as I think it is. Just as much as anybody, but I like to be able to really discuss some of these other things. So, everybody out there, if you're a paranormal nut like me, then you're going to be in for a little bit of luck, because we're going to do quite a few different things on paranormal topics. But really wanted to give the conspiracy nuts a little bit of love coming up here too. So hang tight, I'll get you some stuff, and for the UFO nuts and fanatics, well, you got some coming too. So hang tight there, and I'll try to get a little bit of something for everybody as I move forward. If you haven't yet, check out the show's social media. I've been trying to post on there, and hopefully going forward, and now that I'm back to 100%, I can get a little more active. I know that I had posted some cool stuff up last week in regards to the show that I released and some of the news topics that caught my attention. So if you haven't done so, check it out. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, all on there. And, check those out. Now, for those of you who listen to the show, I know a lot of people listen to the show via downloading the podcast on iTunes, and that's awesome. I also have a lot of people who listen, of course, through Spreaker, who I distribute through primarily. But if you haven't listened, I have the show available also on Stitcher. I know a lot of people love Stitcher, and they use that app, so the show is available on Stitcher, so check it out there as well. And I also have a YouTube channel dedicated, which I'm slowly but steadily gaining some listeners on the YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out, and let me know what your preferred method is. I'm always looking for ways to expand the show in terms of who all I can distribute to, and I know there's still a couple applications that I'm working towards getting the show submitted to. So by all means, I'm doing what I can to kind of widen the net a little bit. I'm also working on, and this is related to some show topics. I'm in the process right now of trying to line up a few different authors. There's 3 different authors that I've been approached about the possibility of interviewing. So by all means, I'm trying to get back and kind of work out some of the details there. So I'm really going to be able to kind of go in some different directions here going forward. And I know a number of you really love the Jarrett Gardner interview that I did. And of course, it's a much longer show than I normally do. I typically keep much shorter shows, but I think when I'm doing these interviews, I really want to kind of give a little bit of a longer time frame to really kind of flush out some ideas. So that being said, I'm going to maintain a degree of flexibility there, but I'm in the process right now of trying to line some of those up. So hopefully I'll have some more details, maybe by the end of the week, or if not, maybe next. So we'll see. We'll go from there, but some really interesting topics once again. And as I stated before, working really hard to try to cover all the bases as much as I possibly can. There are times I think, boy, this show would be so much easier if I just did UFOs and extraterrestrials, or, oh, this would be so much easier if I just did ghosts and paranormal, or just cryptids, or just conspiracies, right? I mean, in so many ways, it would certainly narrow the focus, but I have found, and I think those of you who've been listening to the show long enough, that so many of these things are so interrelated, so interconnected, that I would find myself, if I did try to focus on one particular subject, I would find myself constantly moving into another topic, touching on something and never really getting into it. So I really am working very hard to keep the focus the same, having this broad spectrum, but still be able to give everybody what it is that they love the most. And I look at the statistics and I try to figure out, okay, people really love this show. They really love this show. So I want to try to give you what you want. I want to try to give you what it is that you're interested in. But in the same respect, I also want to remain true to the show, true to my goal, which my goal has been to look at the paranormal and conspiracies, and look at this in a different way, and present perhaps a different perspective. And while I have to admit, there are plenty of times that I don't necessarily offer maybe something necessarily brand new to the table. But what I like to do is think about things in not a separate way, but in an interconnected way. Because, as I stated, I think many of these things are all very connected. And this episode will be another example of that belief. And I think I'll reaffirm that with the topic of spirit communication today. There are so many ways in which you constantly hear about Bigfoot's being sighted around UFO sightings. There's much debate about the nature of interdimensional beings. Perhaps they're ghosts, perhaps they're extraterrestrials. Is a ghost an extraterrestrial? There's so many different directions that you can go that I feel like I really need to discuss a number of things. And of course, I've even touched into some of the more scientific things. And I certainly intend to do that as well, because my belief and my hope is that these topics can move out of the fringe and gain a little bit more mainstream appeal, because there is something happening here. There's a phenomenon here. And I think it goes far beyond just, oh, well, these people were crazy because they believe in this. They're crazy because they had a UFO experience, or they're crazy because they claim that they saw a ghost. I think that's unfair, and it's ridiculous to make those kinds of assumptions about people these days. We are far more educated than we've ever been at any point in history. And that being said, I think we're recognizing things in a way that we didn't before. So, yes, I think it's important that we maintain an open mind, that we listen and we begin to look at these things. And I really want to see a scientific push as much as possible. But that being said, and I think we still need to maintain the focus on the people on the ground who've had the sightings, People criticize mainstream science because it is, or any kind of mainstream academia as being, the ivory tower, right? You sit up in your ivory tower, you don't know the real world. You're stuck in your books, you're stuck in your research. And as being someone who worked in academia for a while, I get that. I understand how people can have that viewpoint. That being said, I think that there's a middle ground that can be had. And that's what I would really love to see from these topics. So as we go forward in discussing this topic today, I'm going to try to approach that. And I think that if we really want to truly advance these types of fields, that we need to bring an all-encompassing approach, one that looks at the science as well as what's actually happening, and then tries to find an explanation. Because that's the goal. Let's find proof. Let's find an explanation, and not just what has been done or what has always been done. And okay, let's look at this from a fresh perspective and eliminate all possibilities and carefully test our thesis before we believe that it is true. And that's my goal, and that's my hope as we move forward, that we can begin to move these fields in that direction. Now, a couple of news topics I really wanted to bring up and touch upon. Just a couple days ago, we were looking at the 51st anniversary of the JFK assassination. Now, I have not done a show on the JFK assassination. I've really debated on this. I've debated heavily. I thought about doing it, and I thought, well, I've got a huge supporter of the show, Rob Clark, who has a podcast on Spreaker, the Lone Gunman podcast. If you haven't checked it out, it is all things the JFK assassination. If you're going to do the JFK assassination, you can do. That's a situation where you're looking at. You can do one focus on that, and you can make that your show, because there is a ton of material and a ton of different theories that you can examine with the JFK assassination. So if you're looking for some JFK conspiracy, and you're looking to really get some more, of course, there's a ton of I know it's circulated news. I know that there's a new book out from a former lover of Lee Harvey Oswald, who's claiming that more or less he was a patsy, so there's a number of different things going on in the JFK assassination. So check out Rob Clark's podcast on Spreaker, the Lone Gunman podcast, all things JFK, and I'm sure he will. Any questions, any things, I'm sure he's going to discuss it. I've had a chance to listen to a few of the episodes myself. Very entertaining. I think you'll like it. If you like my podcast, I think you'll like his. Very similar kind of style. It's just he's all focusing on the JFK assassination. So go check that out when you got the chance. I think you'll like it. Now, another news item, and I'm sticking completely in the conspiracy and paranormal theme here. Something a bit of interest. Now, I always like to talk about things in the news or these latest UFO sightings, but this is something that it's a UFO related topic, but really gets into what I had just said a few minutes ago. The Mutual UFO Network, also known as MUFON, perhaps the best known data collection agency of UFO reports. I know that there's a number of you out there who are you're not big supporters of MUFON. Okay, fair enough. Okay. That being said, MUFON is moving in a direction now to create a new database in which, more or less, they can really expand and have a new system for capturing UFO reports and finding answers. And they had just started a Kickstarter page not too long ago. I think that they have till December 2nd, but they're looking to raise... I'm trying to remember how much. I think they're looking to raise about $78,000 to try to build this new database. Now, if you're of the kind who is a supporter of the Mutual UFO Network, and you have a little extra money and you want to help, feel free. I know it's on their website, and I'm certain that they would appreciate it. And while I understand that there's some that are very skeptical of Mutual UFO Network, there are people who believe that they are part of the disinformation campaign. And you're certainly entitled to your opinion, and I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. But that being said, in my opinion, I believe the Mutual UFO Network is a great way of trying to create a standardized form for investigating UFOs and trying to bring a little bit more science into the picture. As I had stated earlier, we need to find a balance. We need to find a balance between the people on the ground and the researchers in the ivory tower. And I think that this kind of thing, this MUFON and other similar types of websites, because I know there's others out there that do this, are a great way of being able to bridge the gap between the people on the ground and the people in the tower. Because we need the people in the tower to come out of their towers and get on the ground and see what's happening. And MUFON does that. they utilize a number of resources, so certainly voluntary resources, people who have certain scientific backgrounds as well as other research type backgrounds who can investigate some of these things. Because what the UFO field needs is an opportunity to be able to really decipher what is truly a UFO and what is truly explainable. Because not everybody who looks up in the sky is going to be able to recognize every little single thing that's in there. Most people don't. I know I couldn't. That being said, when something is truly outrageous, truly abnormal, usually that gets your attention. But what we need is a nice meeting place. And I think that MUFON offers that possibility. So if you're of the kind that's capable and is willing and is a supporter of MUFON, you might want to check that out and donate to their cause. Once again, I think that they represent. They're one of a number of potentially good ways to create a standardized method of investigation for the UFO phenomena. So, moving forward, a couple other comments on the show. I'm working closely, trying to find ways. I know that I had talked about the possibility of doing a money bomb, and it's still something I'm kicking around. But I'm at this point also looking at the possibility of bringing in a sponsor or two. I know that some people don't like that. I get that. That being said, there is a cost involved in. The cost at times it can be a little bit of an issue, and I certainly don't want it to be prohibitive for me continuing to do the show. So I'm looking for ways of offsetting some of the costs of producing the show, and I'm currently looking at a couple possible sponsors, and I don't have any intentions of flooding this show with commercial after commercial. That's not my intention, but I am looking at different ways. So if you listen and you're interested in sponsoring the show, feel free to email me at web, that's 2 B's, WEBB, of conspiracy at gmail.com, or reach out to me on the Facebook page as well as Twitter and Google+. If you're interested in sponsoring the show and you have a business you want to promote, I have a fairly wide reach at this point. So feel free if you're interested, or if you even have some possible suggestions, let me know. I would welcome that. As I stated, I don't intend on flooding the show with commercials. I know that's not what anybody wants, but in the same respect, I want to be able to keep the show going, and I really want to expand and improve. And for me to be able to do that, it is going to require a degree of revenue, unfortunately. Unfortunately, nothing's free. Well, not exactly anyways, right? So, that being said, let me know if you're interested. Now, today's episode is about spirit communication. Now, I realize right out the window, atheists and some others are maybe perhaps already okay. Well, this isn't something that I'm necessarily interested in. I would ask that before you pass judgment, that you listen to the whole show, because there's a number of different theories about spirit communication and spirit communication devices. So bear with me as we move forward before you pass judgment necessarily right out the get-go. Now, the idea of contacting spirits, the spirits of those of our departed loved ones who have passed away, and whether there's an afterlife or not, of course, there's much speculation and no real proof necessarily one way or another. However, as I have been fond of stating and quoting Albert Einstein a number of times on this show, I am of the belief that matter cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. So, I am of the belief that we transform. What it is that we transform into, I don't know. Many people believe that it is a spirit, and then we move into a heavenly realm, or we move into an astral plane, or as some believe that those evil people move into a hell type of place, right? There's a number of different beliefs on that. But for as long as people have been devising and trying to determine what happens to us once we die, there have been just as many people who have been trying to reach those who have moved on to the next realm or have died, but in the belief that we can still communicate with those people. Now, a few weeks back, the most one of the most popular spirit communication devices ever was highlighted in the movie Ouija. Now, the Ouija board has been around in some form or another really definitively since the late 19th century. During that time in history, spiritualism and occult movements they had become really popular. People were really wanting to delve into what happens when we die. Can we still communicate with us? So this movement really kind of spurred this growth into the development of this Ouija board. And people had been using similar devices in their home, a lot of homemade type of things. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what a Ouija board is, of course, it is a board type of device. It's now manufactured by a game maker, and I can't remember which one it is offhand. And I don't intend on plugging them anyways, but it has all the letters in the alphabet, a yes and a no, and I believe a maybe offhand, and then a goodbye. The idea is that you, at least one other person, I know even some people use it alone, put your hands on this type of this planchette, as it's referred to. Many people in older times would use a glass, and this device, the planchette or the glass, would move to these letters. And as you asked questions to the spirits that you would try to communicate through this Ouija board, they would move to these letters and then spell out answers to your questions. Now, William Fuld is commonly credited as being the founder of the trademarked Ouija board, right? The trademark filing of it. Of course, the one that's the movie's based on. However, there's a number of men who were also responsible for the creation of the board, and many of these men, ironically enough, for those conspiracy buffs out there, right? Freemasons were associated with the development of the mainstream marketed Ouija board, okay? And they were all either lawyers or politicians, which right there, of course, for all the conspiracy buffs and conspiracy nuts out there, everybody's like, okay, we have a Freemason connection to the Ouija board. Well, what's going on here? And the truth is, I'm not sure. Perhaps there is something more here. And perhaps this would be something to certainly delve into in later shows. But it would appear that Freemasonry is highly related to the development of the mass-marketed Ouija board. Well, why would Freemasons want that? What is the goal in this particular conspiracy? I'm not sure. Perhaps this is a misinformation. Perhaps this is us trying to communicate with, trying to get the masses to sell their souls to some demonic forces, right? There's a number of theories that you could go there, but it's something to be, certainly something to be looked into, as Freemasons were heavily involved in the mass marketing of the very first Ouija boards right around the turn of the century. Now, coincidentally enough, the Ouija board of all of spirit communication devices has had immense staying power in popular culture, as we have witnessed by this latest movie. But in the 80s, there were a number of witch boards, what they call them, which very similar type of concepts. So the Ouija board has a significant lasting power. The question is, does the Ouija board work? And if it does, well, how does it work? How does it actually work? Well, there's much debate as to whether or not it actually works. I personally, when I was much younger, I did try a Ouija board once. Very strange. I'm not going to deny it. By all accounts, this thing moved on its own. Very bizarre answers to some questions I got. Ironically enough, the entity, whatever it was, actually predicted a number of things that came true for me, which was very bizarre. Looking back on it now, I'm about, 25 years out, 24 years out since I used it, and it's pretty accurately predicted a number of things, which is very creepy to me. So from my own personal experience, do I think that there is something to this? Certainly. Personally, that's what I have to work with. Now, there are those who believe that that perhaps that these are evil beings that are controlling these, and not actually the ghosts of your departed loved ones. And that certainly could be. I don't know. All I know is that with whatever spirit it was that I had been speaking to on this Ouija board on this particular time, the only time that I used it, was not a spirit of a loved one that I knew. So was it a spirit of someone who had passed away where I was doing it at? Was it a demonic force, an evil force? I'm not sure. Now, I didn't have any traumatic things happen to me afterwards. I didn't have a massive haunting or anything like that. I didn't have poltergeist develop in my home. Nothing like that had happened. Or in this particular location where it was, because it wasn't my home, in this particular location, nothing happened there. I don't know. To me, it wound up being a fairly benign experience. It was nothing really happened beyond just kind of real creepy that this thing really did seem to move on its own. Now, there are also a number of people who believe that this phenomena is not actually anything spirit related, that it is a more or less an ability used through the human mind, that it is controlled through an ideomotor response, that we're perhaps involuntarily moving this without even realizing that we are. Just enough. We're just carefully enough that we're moving it to this particular letter, or this particular letter, that we're just doing just enough between yourself and whoever else may be have their hands on the planchette or whatever device it is that you're using for your particular Ouija board. So that being said, what is going on with the Ouija board? I don't know. I will say from my own personal experience, something happened. What it was, I can't explain. The things that were said to me wound up being predictions that came true, because I asked questions about the future. I don't know why. I don't know why I felt so inclined to do that. But when I did that, I got a number of answers to things that happened. Very specific things, very peculiar things that wouldn't just be a 50-50 shot. Very specific predictions that came out of this thing. It was legitimate. I can't explain it. Was it a spirit? I don't know. Was I tapping into some sort of psychic realm inside my brain? Maybe. Maybe I was channeling some information from somewhere and putting it through into the board. There are a number of people who believe that's how the Ouija board works. Nevertheless, very bizarre experience for me. And I really came away from it not being able to explain what happened. And, of course, initially, for a number of years, I didn't believe it. I thought it was all garbage. I didn't think it actually worked. Here I am, more than 2 decades later. It was right. It was right. So, very bizarre, needless to say. Now, another device that has gained some popularity in recent years is the Frank's box, or the ghost box. And this particular box, now, it is a device that makes an attempt to communicate to spirits through EVP, electronic voice phenomena. Now, this EVP is produced in combination with a computer program, as well as using an AM radio receiver receiving random voltage. And that this thing is basically running sweeps of trying to locate different sounds that spirits trying to utilize these signals may communicate through. And this Frank's box has been pretty popular, at least since the last, I think, 10 plus years or so now. There are some people, of course, who question it, who think that, well, it's just randomly picking up noises, that this is just, you're using radio frequencies, so this kind of thing can happen. That being said, there's another school of thought on the Frank's box. That once again, that what we're looking at here is, instead of ghosts, that there are a number who use this Frank's box to believe they're communicating with extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings, and that these extraterrestrials are utilizing these radio frequencies to communicate with them. it's fascinating. And these boxes, and I know the founder, I can't remember his last name offhand, but I know that the founder of this, he recently passed. So I'm not sure what we're looking at in terms of continued production of the Frank's box, the Ghost box. But I know there are a number of people in paranormal circles who swear by the Frank's box, who believe that it is 100% effective, that this is what they use to communicate with spirits. And there are others who are absolutely adamant that they're communicating with extraterrestrials. I've never used a Frank's box. I don't know. But there are a number of people who completely swear by it. And once again, this is I shouldn't say highly, but this is a piece of technology. This is a constructed device. This isn't where a Ouija board, for example, where we're using rudimentary objects. This is using radio circuits, radio receivers, computer programs, different, there's some technology involved in the creation of the Frank's box. So there are those who question whether or not the technology is being interpreted correctly, or if it's even working correctly, or if we're just picking up random radio signals from Earth, and it's just we're picking up more noise from people. These are all different criticisms that have been launched at the Frank's box. However, I would tell you, if there's anybody who's ever used a Frank's box, I would love to get some feedback from you and find out how it worked for you, what you took away from it. If you own one, I would love to hear some stories about it. Please shoot me an email or get with me on the social media pages and let me know. There are some people who are very adamant about these boxes, that they work. So let me know. I would love to get a little bit more information about the Frank's box, but it's certainly something that has caught my attention over the recent years. Now, another box, I should say, so to speak, that it's been theorized for a number of years, is the Edison's ghost machine box. Now, this is an interesting story because there's some debate as to whether or not this is a legitimate spirit communication device. It is known, however, historians, even though the mainstream ones won't admit it, Thomas Edison had made an effort. Of course, for those of you who are familiar, imagine most people are familiar with Thomas Edison, invented the light bulb, but he also worked on phones. Now, he and Alexander Graham Bell, of course, were working, and Graham Bell wound up being sort of the founder of the telephone. But Edison was making an effort to actually create something to communicate with those who have passed. And that's how he wound up developing this phone. The idea behind the phonograph initially was that he was trying to, when he developed the phonograph, when he created that, he was actually trying to create a device that would be able to communicate with people who have passed away. So there was this idea that he had actually succeeded. There are people who believe that, and he had told Scientific America that the apparatus, that this apparatus in the nature of a value, so to speak, that is to say that the slightest conceivable effort is made to exert many times the initial power for inactive purposes. He likened it to the mere turning of a valve that starts this huge stream, basically to open up this whisper. The idea was that he would be able to just slightly tune a valve and be able to open up the floodgates to the spirit world and be able to capture all of these devices, all these recordings from people with this ghost box of his, this ghost machine box. He would be able to develop this highly sensitive valve that he would be able to pick up each individual frequencies. And I think that there are many who believe that the Frank's box is in some ways a derivative of this idea. Okay. However, when we look at the formal history, there does not appear to be any paperwork or prototypes on record, okay, that to show that it ever existed. But there are a number of people in the paranormal circles who believe, yes, this actually happened, this is true, this is what happened. This was created. So that being said, there is a lot of written words about him being interested in pursuing this, but in terms of actually developing an object that could capture spirit communication, well, there is no record of it. But for those in the field, they speculate that he had, in fact, and there is this long-standing rumor. I certainly believe, based on the history, that he made every attempt to. I question whether or not he had any kind of actual success with it. Nevertheless, certainly other people have come along and have attempted to do the same thing. And that leads us to the Ovilus. Now, the Ovilus is another device. It was created by Bill Chappell, and it works by measuring changes in the environmental energy fields around it. It modulates energy changes into an audible speech using like a synthesizer chip. And it also incorporates an English word dictionary, and it creates functional phonetical sounds out of words. It puts together the sounds and creates words out of these frequencies. It's a small, lightweight device. It's portable enough that you can take it anywhere. And, of course, I know a number of paranormal groups that also love to use the Ovilus. It's powered by a battery. It has 7 different modes of operation. Has over 500 plus words, at least at the last research that I had seen. Measures EMF levels, electromagnetic fields. Of course, EMF, for those of you who aren't familiar, are often believed to be affected by the presence of spirit energy, and the Ovilus incorporates that, whereas the Frank box, however, does not. It is there's some concern that perhaps EMF can cause interference if it's too close, whereas this incorporates the use of EMF. Now, the use of these devices, such as the Ovilus and this technology, there is a tremendous potential here, in my opinion, for the field, for being able to advance into really try to determine what it is that we're finding here. Because, as we have discovered, and as I had sort of teased in towards the beginning of the show, the communication that's occurring may not actually be with spirits. It could be psychic energy. It could be an internal energy. We could be tapping into something inside ourselves or something else that we're not capable of seeing. Perhaps when using a Ouija board, we're not actually communicating with any kind of spirit entity, but we're tapping into some sort of knowledge source from beyond. And many speculate the Akashic Records, which sneak preview, that'll be the show for this coming Friday, the Akashic Records, so check that out. Anyways, perhaps we're tapping into this universal knowledge when we're using a Ouija board, right? Or in the case of these technological devices, well, maybe we're not actually getting spirit energy. We could once again be tapping into our own energy, but maybe we're actually talking to, as many who use the Frank box believe, extraterrestrials, or maybe some sort of interdimensional being, something other than a spirit. Many swear by extraterrestrial communication with the Frank's box. So perhaps we're not actually communicating with spirits at all. Perhaps we're communicating with something else. It's hard to say. I've never used a Frank's box, and I've never used an Ovilus, so I cannot personally provide you with an experience for those. I don't know. I know that they're both popular in many paranormal research groups and in much of the community. That being said, I've never used one, so I cannot vouch for its quality or its validity. I have used a Ouija board, as I related, and that was a very bizarre experience for me. I can't remember all the details of that experience. I know that it was a prolonged communication. It wasn't just 5 minutes and done. Myself and another individual were communicating with this entity of some sort that we believe, possibly, for probably about an hour. And during this time, a great deal of information was shared. And in that information, I sought answers for the future. And those answers were true. In many cases, it took 20 years, but they came true. Now, and they were all things in which I was unable to control. So, what do I make of all of this? Well, I believe that it's possible we're communicating with something. I don't know what it is. If it's an astral plane, if it's spirits, or if it's extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings. I believe this is a legitimate phenomenon. This isn't people just making up stories. While in some cases it may be, as a whole, I don't believe that this is just a random making up stories, having a good time, just partying and fooling around. This is a legitimate phenomenon. There is something happening when we make an effort to communicate with these, at least with the Ouija board. As I stated, based on other people's testimony, the other devices seem to work as well. The real question is, what are we actually communicating with? That, I believe, is the question. It's not if, it's not, are we reaching out to another form of life? I think we are. The real question is, what is that life? Are we reaching into some knowledge in the universal astral plane? Some knowledge in the Hall of Records, in this heavenly existence? Are we reaching out and communicating with an extraterrestrial? Or are we communicating with legitimate spirits, or perhaps evil entities, for that matter? I'm not sure, but there is some kind of communication occurring here. I believe that is certainly possible. Well, that's what I have for you today. Once again, thank you for listening to the show and supporting the show. And I will continue to do my best to release podcasts on certainly a more timely manner. And as I had stated, there will be another new episode this week. Just 4 days from now, I'll be releasing another episode on the Akashic Records. So we'll be building a little bit on this episode as well. So if you have any comments, questions, show ideas, shoot me an email, let me know, reach out to me on social media. Also, if you love the show, please review it on iTunes and Stitcher. The more that you review, the more likelihood it gets featured, and I can even attract a larger audience. So once again, thank you for all those who continue to support the show. And I will be back with you on Friday. For those of you in the United States, hopefully you have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy your wonderful Thanksgiving days, and hopefully you get a chance to spend it with some people that you love and you care about. So until Friday, have a great week.